Our next guest is Sarah Leifheit. She is from Wheeling, West Virginia, and was a sergeant in the United States Army. During her 12 years of service, she deployed twice, once in Afghanistan and once in Iraq. Sarah completed her Bachelor of Arts in psychology from West Virginia University and is currently completing her master's in clinical social work from Boston University. Hey, girl. How you doing?
Fantastic.
Yeah. So, real quick, I know one cool thing about your deployment.
Oh gosh.
You got a picture with Robin Williams.
I do, and it's on my wall at my house.
Yeah.
I was pretty sad when he took his own life.
Right.
That hit me harder than what I could ever imagine.
Right.
Because I'm like, if this dude couldn't make it, what chance do I have?
Yeah.
But they say the funniest people are the saddest, so.
Yeah. I tell a lot of jokes. I'm just kidding. No, so I mean, tell us about Sarah's Army. Tell us about your deployments and stuff. I'm
a little bit older, so I've been deployed a lot earlier. I landed in Afghanistan September 11th, 2002. And I remember that day, and I'm just remember thinking, this is about to hit the fan. Because it was the anniversary and everything else like that. And I land in Afghanistan in Bagram, and Bagram was like a mile long, and it was just barbed wire everywhere. And I was 18 at the time. I was young.
Right.
And so it was crazy. I'm an ammunition specialist, and so anything that had to do with ammo, I did it.
Right.
And there wasn't that many EOD in country at the time because the war was still new. And so sometimes we have to blow up stuff, which sometimes we had to transport stuff. If it needed done, we did it. And that's including stuff on base too, because we had the trucks, we had the equipment to move the things that everybody needed moved. Nobody else had the equipment, let alone the drivers, to get stuff done.
Yeah.
So I was Afghanistan. I went to Iraq in 2008. And that was way different than my first deployment. My first deployment was rugged and easier. My second deployment was more rigid, and I had to salute people, and there were more rules, and it was more like a garrison deployment, and those changes were huge.
Oh yeah, it's way more stressful.
Way more stressful. And like, I always say that my second deployment's way worse than my first one. My first one, I was raped by a Navy intelligence officer. I don't know his name. He was somebody that would smoke outside our tent all the time. And I came home, and I was so young. And I remember coming home, and my behaviors were just crazy. I would do outrageous things. Even though I was underage, I would drink like a fish.
Sure.
I'd spend crazy amounts of money at really crappy restaurants. And I just would do outrageous things. And I got a little help for that, but then I was like, oh, this is lame. I don't need help for this. And then I got deployed my second time, and that's when all the problems that happened with my first tour kind of came to a head. And it made it way worse. So I went kind of a little bit crazy.
Yeah, I mean, you survived like that first one, where terrible things happened, only to get just like super exposed to it.
Yep.
Again.
Yeah, like all at once, just boom. And I was in the reserves, so I didn't have to deal with this every day.
Right. But sometimes I honestly think the active duty, I mean, it's a little bit easier for us because we come back and we have that order. That, you know, we're still being told where to be, what to wear. We don't have to think about things. I can't even imagine for you guys coming back and just immediately putting street clothes back on.
It's crazy.
And that's it.
And my first tour, it was so early in everything. And we went back to Fort Lewis, Washington, because that's where we flew out of. We spent maybe 2 days there just to drop off our weapons, drop off our gas masks, secure that stuff. And then we flew into Pittsburgh, and they said, see ya, bye. And I remember driving home like, what the do I do now? Like just sitting in the back of my mom's car, and she's chatting me up, and I'm just like, I don't know how to do anything anymore. And so there was a lot of discourse in my family.
Yeah. So I mean, you had like no hand holding in your transition. It was just
none. And that made it so nobody knew that something was wrong.
Right.
And that was the hard part.
Right.
Even when I came back from my second tour, it was just isolation, and nobody knew that something was wrong.
I met you not long after your
I remember.
second tour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That, like, after my second tour, I was pretty messed up. And I would have therapy 3 times a week. And I would just say, well, just make it to the next therapy. And then just make it to the next therapy. And then I got to this point where it's just like, well, this is dumb. I'm just going to this therapy. What's the end game? And so I have this little Jack Russell. His name's Charlie.
Charlie Crazy Hairs.
Charlie Crazy Hairs. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't kill myself because I didn't want him to eat my body.
Yeah.
I didn't. That was my thing. I didn't want him to eat my body. I couldn't imagine this poor little innocent baby Charlie. He wasn't a baby. He's like 5 at that time. I couldn't imagine putting him through that because that would be the most horrendous thing for this loyal dog to have to eat the owner.
Yeah.
And I knew nobody would check on me. I mean.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
I lived by myself. Nobody would check on me.
Your parents live, you know.
My parents were in Wheeling. I lived in Morgantown.
Yeah.
I talked to them every once in a while. I mean, I was 25 at the time. And how often, I mean, I'm not super close, but how often do 25-year-olds really talk to their family?
Right. So do you want to kind of like describe like what it was like trying to just make it day to day? I mean, that's no way to live.
Oh, it was horrible. There was times where I didn't even get off the couch. I remember when I got my cable turned on at my apartment, I was just like, yes, I have something to do. Because I had cable and internet. So that was 2 other things. So I have Charlie, cable, and internet.
Right.
That's 3 things on my side.
Yeah.
And that was just enough motivation to at least make it to the beginning of the school year.
Yeah.
And I knew that I had to do something.
Yeah.
Either suicide or get better.
Right.
It came to that climax, that pinnacle point.
And like that's a brutal point to be at.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
on or off.
Yep.
Like a light switch.
It's do or die. Literally.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if that's where it's coined from, but
Yeah. It might as well be, right?
yep.
Yeah. I remember meeting you. What was that 2010?
10.
Yeah. And we were all just. I think what got a lot of us were struggling because we were just fresh back.
Yeah.
And a lot of us had been hurt, and a lot of us were struggling, and we kind of just all relied on each other.
Yeah. And that definitely, we had the Vets Club at WVU, and that's how I met you. We went to do something with Barbara.
Yeah, we went down to
to
Charleston.
Yeah.
Dave Kern.
Yeah, with Dave Kern. And so we went down, and it was so weird. It was so surreal being in a van full of vets. And the only other veterans that I've been around up to that point were people in my unit. And I felt like I couldn't rely on those people anymore.
Right. Because the whole stigma thing that.
Yeah, I
we
couldn't
talked
tell them.
about.
I couldn't tell them what was going on. Not to mention a couple of them harassed me during my tour and harassed me once I got back.
Yeah, I mean it's horrendous. The state of things for female in the military.
Yep.
I mean, those numbers. I mean that needs a whole show.
Oh, alone.
Yeah.
And
Probably 2 shows.
Every time I talk about it, more and more female vets come up to me and like, oh, I experienced the same thing. I experienced the same thing.
Yeah.
And it just amazes me how many females have experienced this, and yet nobody's talking about it.
Yeah. No, it's as big an epidemic as this.
Because I felt crazy for a really long time. Like, oh, it's just me. Oh, I'm being a sensitive female. And I can joke with the best of them. I can tell jokes all day. And that's what she said jokes.
Yeah.
But to realize that this many females are going through it, and it's not just a sensitive female thing, but it's for reals.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it happens to men too. And this is something that we really need to get to light. There is nothing wrong with the victims of sexual assault. We're sexual harassment. And we just kind of got used to victim blaming in our society because
Yeah.
I have no idea why we got used to it. We just had to blame somebody.
Yeah. Now, like a lot of our veterans that are attempting suicide are female veterans.
Yep.
Just, Would you think that like a lot of that stems from the military sexual trauma?
Oh yeah, because there is this pressure to do things and this pressure to provide certain favors for people in order to get that promotion or in order to get not put on detail again.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I got put on guard duty because they didn't want me around. They moved my job several times because they didn't want me around because I wouldn't sleep with them.
Right.
And it's hard. And once you come to that point where you realize it, like, hey, I'm not banging them, and that's why I'm getting treated like this. That doesn't make sense. We're cool back home. Why aren't we cool here? But I mean, I don't know the solution to that.
Yeah.
It takes a lot brighter minds than mine.
Right. What would you say to a female in the military or a female veteran that was
You're not alone. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You don't have to do this alone. Just get help. Nobody's going to judge you. Period. You don't have to be judged. You don't have to judge yourself. You can grow from it.
Right. Now, what would you like if you had you have the stand right now? You're at the podium. What would you say to the civilians who've never went into the military, who are they're struggling to understand us? I mean, they want to help us.
Yeah.
But what would you say to them about everything that we've talked about, the military sexual trauma, the suicide problem?
I think that it's a problem that we as soldiers have a hard time understanding ourselves. And sometimes when you go to combat or you're in these situations where there's military sexual trauma, you just have to deal with it the best way you know how.
Right.
That's what we're doing. We're trying to deal with it and be okay the best way we know how. And sometimes it just takes that ear. Sometimes it just takes that shoulder. Sometimes it's just, hey, I'm here if you ever want to talk. It's taken me 14 years to tell my dad about my rape. My mom still doesn't know. She might know now.
Mom, don't watch PBS.
But even then, like, it's a platform that I can use to be like, this really happens. I'm a real person. I was a damn good soldier.
Right.
I was a freaking awesome sergeant. I took care of my troopies.
Yeah, I've seen pictures of your DCUs. They were ironed.
I'm not that old. Jeez, try to date me. But you don't have to be alone. And
Right.
just listen and be there. Sometimes the behaviors aren't necessarily a lash out on you. It's a symbol of a bigger problem. It's a product of a bigger problem.
Right.
Sometimes anger, there's something at the root of that. And the world is not a just place.
Right.
We grow up thinking, oh, bad things happen to bad people. That's not the case.
Bad things happen to everybody.
Bad things happen to everybody. It does not discriminate.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something we often forget in society.
Yeah.
And it's sad.
Yeah. Well, Sarah, you're incredibly brave for getting up here and talking about that. But this is the kind of thing that people need to hear because nobody really ever hears this side of it.
Yeah.
I think, because everybody loves and respects the veterans so much, we're just kind of exalted a little bit.
Yeah.
So we, sometimes we lose our humanity in the public's eye.
Yeah.
And I think, people hearing these kind of things is great. So thanks for coming on and talking about it. I love you.